Okay, here we go. Let's get this situated. All right, what we're talking about today is the zeros of the function. We're going to think about it as well as analyzing a graph, which we've kind of done already when we talked about describing a graph and you had to tell the stories. So let's talk about the zeros, okay? What that means based on a graph and figuring them out algebraically. All right, so here we go. Let's start off. We're going to talk about graphically first. Graphically, it is the points at which the graph crosses, backslash, or intersects the x-axis. So it's where the graph crosses the x-axis or intersects the x-axis. And algebraically, it's the point or points, could be 1 point or more than 1 point, at which f of x equals 0. Or you could think of it as when y equals 0. What is the x value when y equals 0? What is x when y equals 0? That's what you're finding when you're looking for the zeros. Okay. All right. What are they also called? These are other words that mean the same thing. So when we're talking about zeros, that's the same as talking about, it's called the roots, the x-intercepts, and it's also called the solutions. All of these are the same thing as the zeros. They mean the exact same thing. Those vocabulary words are interchangeable. All right, so now let's look at what are the answers going to be. So if I'm wanting to find the zeros from the graph, that means I'm wanting to find where does this graph cross the x-axis. This is the x-axis. So it's crossing right here. So what are the coordinates of that point? That is, excuse me, 2, 0. Notice the y value is 0. We want to know what is the x value when y equals 0. Remember, we're asking that question. What does x equal when y equals 0? Well, in this scenario, the x is 2. So therefore, the answer is x equals 2. Next example. Remember, we said it could be 1 point or 2 points. In this example, it's crossing it twice. It crosses at, so x, since it's crossing it twice, we have a set of numbers. So we have to use our set builder notation, and you write it in order from least to greatest. So I cannot write today. Right in order from least to greatest. Well, if you read from left to right, you're going to get them in that order anyway. So this is at -2 and 1. There's my answer. And next example, we're going to hop down to number 6. Okay. This one, how many times does it cross? 1, 2, 3. So I better have 3 answers. Okay. So I'm going to have x equals curvy bracket, and I'm looking here, and this is at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on the negative side. So this is going to be -5, comma, and then it crosses at the origin. So that means the x is 0. And then I have 1, 2, 3. So the last one is 3. It's extremely easy when you've got a graph because you're just seeing where does it cross the x-axis. Now we're pulling in, excuse me, the algebraic method. Okay, so looking at this, this is where we're going to pull in some more information and some steps that we have to do. All right. First things first, the steps you have to follow. Set the function, we can think of it as equation, equal to 0. Remember, the ultimate goal is I want to know what does x equal when y equals 0. That's what I'm trying to do. And then for step 2, solve for x. All right, so here we go. We're going to do this for number 1. We're going to take f of x. Remember, that's the same as y, and I'm trying to find out when y equals 0, what is x? So I'm going to plug it in. I'm going to have 0 equals 4x minus 8, and now I just solve the equation. My equation wall, then I add 8 to both sides, and I end up with 8, zeros out, 8 equals 4x. Divide by 4, and I get that 2 equals x. So therefore my answer is x equals 2. Now, if it asked you for the ordered pair, then you would write 2, 0. If it asked for the ordered pair, we're not right now. We're just wanting to find the 0, so you don't need to write this part. I'm just trying to show you what it would look like. All right, next example. Number 9. Again, we're plugging in 0, so I'm going to have 0 equals -x plus 7. The reason I chose to do this one is because it's got that negative. People tend to forget when they're solving. So we subtract 7, and I end up with -7 equals -x. This is not the answer. X is not by itself. This is understood to be a -1, so I have to divide by -1 on both sides, and I get that x equals 7. Be careful with the integer rules. Catching my feet on all the cables underneath me. All right, here we go. Next, real quick, and then we get to use the calculator and the computer for the rest of this. Okay, so again, I'm plugging in 0 for the f of x. So I'm going to have 0 equals, oops, wrong problem. For those, we get to use calculator. I'm plugging in the 0 here, so I'm going to have 0 equals -2/5 x plus 4. Remember, I'm moving what's farthest away from the x first, so I have to move the 4 first. So I'm going to subtract 4 from both sides. This zeroes out, and now I have -4 equals -2/5 x. This is a fraction, so I multiply by the reciprocal, because if I divide by a fraction, you flip the second and multiply. So you multiply by a reciprocal when you are dividing fractions. So I'm going to multiply by -5/2 on both sides. And when I do that, I can simplify here. 2 goes into 2 one time, 2 goes into -4, -2 times. So I have -5 times -2, which gives me 10 equals x. Okay, now here's where if you have a calculator, you're just going to use the calculator. If you don't have a calculator, excuse me, then I'm going to show you how to use Desmos until we get back into the classroom where we do have calculators. All right, so here we go. Let's make sure we can see the screen well enough. Ooh. going to have to turn down the darkness on here so it can be seen. Okay, here we go. I'm going to clear all of this stuff if I can press the right button. All right, so now what I'm going to do is in the calculator, I'm going to press this y equals button right here. Okay, y equals. I want to punch in this equation here. Okay, so I'm going to clear whatever's there, and I'm going to click the variable button, which is this one right here where the xt theta n, that's the variable button anytime I've got a variable. So I'm going to hit X, and then I'm going to have squared, which is this button here, the X squared. So I'm going to hit X squared. And then it says minus 16. My camera's kind of zooming out because it's got two things to look at. Minus 16. And then now I'm going to hit zoom, and you can replay this video to see hear the directions again. I'm going to hit zoom, and I want the standard window, 6, because that puts it on the 10 by 10 grid and it fixes any changes. So I'm going to hit 6, the number 6 down here, and then enter. And when I do that, it's graphing it. If it finishes the graph. Okay, it's still working for me. I don't know. I'm wondering if it's because I need to charge my batteries. Let me go back to the second off. We'll click through the enter graph. There we go. Glitch in the system. If you look at this, you'll see that it crosses the x-axis at 2 points, right here and right here. And you can easily count over. This one's at 1, 2, 3, -4. This one's at a +1, 2, 3, 4. So therefore, my answer for 13 would be x equals, set notation, -4, 4. And that one's done. Now we're going to look at it. So I'm going to share screen, and I'm going to show you how would I do this on Desmos. So you would go to desmos.com. Get this stuff situated here. Thank you for your patience. And you should be seeing this screen right here where I've Googled and I just typed in Desmos, and I want the graphing calculator. So I'm going to hit graphing calculator. And you're going to have a screen that's going to pop up like this. You're going to have a graph on one side, and then you're going to have a place where you can type on the other side. So right here is my clicker, the cursor. You can see the flashing line. I want this keyboard down here because I'm going to have to put some special characters in here. So I'm going to click on that keyboard, and you'll notice it brings up information down here that I can use. If I click the ABC, I can get to the alphabet and all that stuff. But I'm just wanting to use this right here. So I'm going to now look on my paper at number 19, and I'm going to punch it in exactly like it's seen on the page. So I'm going to put, I'm using my keyboard. So I'm going to use F, parentheses, X, close parentheses, equals, and I'm using all this from down here if you see, or I can type it in with the keyboard, equals X. Now, this is where I need to pay attention. It's X to the third. Since it's X to the third, I'm going to use this A raised to the B because that's a variable. That means I can choose the number to use. Okay, so I'm going to click that, and it now raises it up a little bit so I can write an exponent, and I'm going to put a 3. And then I'm going to arrow to the right, and I'm no longer up there. And now I can finish my equation. So I'm going to have minus 5x. Now I want squared, so I'm going to just hit the squared button. And you'll notice that it's graphing stuff as I'm typing. It is actually coming up with the graph as I'm typing this in. Plus 2x plus 8. That's my equation. That's my full equation. I'm looking for where this graph crosses the y-axis, the x-axis. So I'm looking for no, oh, whoa, it gives me the point right away. I don't even have to count. It tells me right here. When I am looking at this, I notice that the ordered pair is -1, 0. That means that my x is -1. Scroll to the next point. The x is 2. Third point, the x is 4. Hint, it's an x to the third. I better have 3 solutions. I better have 3 zeros, 3 roots, 3 x-intercepts. They're all the same name for the same thing. So 3 zeros, and I write down my numbers. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to stop sharing for a minute so we can write down the answers. So for 19, we would say x equals curvy bracket, and I would have -1, comma, 2, comma, 4, because I got all of that from looking at the Desmos graph. And for all of this section here, for the 13 through 22, whenever it says graphing calculator, you may use Desmos or the calculator to get your answers. Now, for these up here where it's just an X by itself, you have to mathematically do this. Now, can you check it with your calculator or with Desmos to make sure you've done your calculations correctly? Absolutely. But you have to show your work for calculating it. All right, y'all have a great day. You're going to be finishing the notes and the classwork homework. When we're looking at, for the last page here, where it says analyzing and describing of the classwork homework, okay, you're wanting to use that vocabulary from the vocabulary packet that I gave you, thinking about, is it discrete or continuous? Discrete means it's the individual dots. Continuous means it's connected. So go back and look at your vocabulary, and you're wanting to be very descriptive about what's happening here. You don't have to tell a story. You can just tell me what's happening. Is it going increasing, decreasing? Just try it out. And if you've got to make adjustments from checking the answer key, that's okay. This is a learning experience right now. Have a great day. Just don't copy it from the answer key. Nobody learns from copying. Thank you.